Christmas DIY season has arrived, and today I have got the best of the best that I know you will love. Run to Dollar Tree, pick up some supplies, and get ready for some fun. My name is Courtney. Let's get crafting. For this project, I have some wood blocks, but I am not making what you might think I'm making. I will be doing a snowman version of my wooden blocks that's coming in a future video. But for this one, I am using 2x4s. This larger piece I cut down to about 6 inches. This smaller piece is cut down to about 4 inches. The bigger piece is getting some red paint. I am just painting it until I like how it looks. This is meant to be a little bit more of a rustic DIY. And then the smaller piece of wood will get painted with some gray paint. This is Steel by Waverly Chalk Paint. Once the blocks are dry, I'm grabbing my pencil, and on the gray block, I'm sketching out a snow mound, I guess, towards the bottom of the block. And then I'm going to draw an outline of a snowman body on that. Once that's kind of sketched out, I will take some white Waverly chalk paint and paint the mound and the snowman with that paint. On the red block, I'm going to paint some, snow dips on the front part of it. And then that side portion, I am going to paint all of that white as well. Time to add some details to the snowman. Using my black paint marker, I'm going to draw on 2 eyes and then add a little sparkle to those eyes with a white dot with my white paint marker. For the outside of the snowman, I'm just gonna brush some light tan paint over the edges of the snowman just to kind of define his body a little bit. Once that's done, I'm also going to start painting the scarf. I decided to paint that green, so that's what I'm working on here. With the scarf painted, I decided to take a little bit of gray paint and brush that along the edges, kind of on top of where I did that brown, along with at the bottom of the snowman to kind of define the difference of the bottom of the snowman and the snow mound. Once that gray was painted, I did paint a orange nose onto the snowman, and I added a little bit of brown paint just to kind of add some depth and dimension to that carrot nose. Then I also stamped on some pink cheeks with a little bit of pink paint. And to finish off the scarf, I used my white paint marker just to add little stripes to the scarf. The last details to add to the snowman were some arms. So again, using my brown paint marker, I drew wooden arms coming from each side, and then in between the little hands of the snowman, I took a silver metallic paint marker and I just freehanded drawing a snowflake. I thought about adding a wooden snowflake here, but I just kind of felt like the hand-drawn was really cute. I will definitely link all of the supplies in today's video, including these paint markers that I absolutely love, down below in the description box. And of course, a snowman needs snow around it, so I took my white paint marker and just added some little snow dots all around. To finish this off, I cut out a decal on my CRICUT that says, "Let it snow." You can grab this file down below in the description box. Added it to the red block along with a little styrofoam snowflake from Dollar Tree, and then I glued the 2 blocks together, and voila, you've got yourself a cute snowman sign. Start by taking off the twine of this reindeer ornament. Now this type of reindeer deer is just not really my style, so we're gonna give it a, whimsical Christmas makeover. So to start, I took some Dollar Tree foam board and I started by sketching out this shape. I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of like, it's not really a half circle, but that's the shape I sketched out. Then using my hobby knife, I cut it out. From there, I drew another shape. It was kind of like a sort of flattened oval, and I sketched that out and then again cut it with my hobby knife. Once I trimmed the edges and made sure they were nice and smooth, I glued them together, and now you have this kind of little face looking thing. This is going to be a reindeer head. So once it was glued together, I took some brown paint and I gave it 3 good coats of paint, making sure that while I painted it, I wasn't going heavy-handed, because with foam board, sometimes if you go too heavy with the paint, the texture, it just gets a little wonky. So I did 3 coats and let that dry. For the antlers, I took some tan paint and I gave those a good coat of that. I ended up putting a total of 3 coats of paint on the antlers. The ears, I used that same brown paint that I used for the foam board head, and again, 3 coats of that brown paint. Now, I wanted this reindeer to have a little bit of a body, so I took some more of that Dollar Tree foam board and figured out kind of how I needed to sketch this out, sketched it out, and then again used my hobby knife to cut out this piece of foam board, and I ended up painting it all brown, and again with 3 coats of paint. To give the ears a little bit of detail, I took a paintbrush and some of that tan paint and painted the insides of the ear with that tan paint. Grabbing some more of that tan paint, I painted the belly area. I did about 2 coats since there was already the brown. I didn't have to put as much paint on there. And then I grabbed my black paint marker and drew on 2 eyes and a black nose. Now, taking some darker brown paint and a wiry brush that I dab off the paint, or at least most of it, I start to outline on the reindeer. So I'm just going to go along the belly outline, along with outlining the head, the nose, the body, and just go along the edge, just kind of dabbing that paint on there. I also went in and did this brown paint on the edges of the antlers, as well as the ears on that metal ornament. To finish off the reindeer head, I took some of that light tan paint and did a quick little highlight at the top of the nose. Then I grabbed my tin snips because I needed to trim the ornament down, and the last step was just to hot glue my little head directly to the ornament. So here is what my reindeer looks like now. Now I'm taking some Christmas garland that I got from Hobby Lobby. Since I left the holes at the top of the ornament, I was gonna do little dangly light things in there like fairy lights, but then I was like, I need to work the garland in. So I just kind of cut it apart and pieced together a little garland for myself to make it work for the antlers. And I just fed it through the holes and then hot glued it in the back. So now it kind of dangles between the 2 antlers. The last thing I needed to add to my reindeer was a little bow. I just took this Dollar Tree ribbon, trimmed it down, and just pieced together a little bow tie myself with some hot glue. And then for the rest of this, I have this paper pack that I had in my stash. It originally came from Hobby Lobby. And what I wanted to do is I had this sign that I haven't been using. I wanted to make the background kind of look like a Christmas quilt. So I trimmed down the paper to different sizes to get the look I was going for. And then to attach it to the sign, I just used a glue stick to get it nice and secure. I did make sure that that dried really, really well before the very last step, which was to glue down my reindeer. I just used hot glue for that. And now I've got myself a very cute reindeer Christmas sign. Make another scrap wood DIY. I started with a 1x4. I just had a scrap piece laying around in my garage, and I cut them to 6 inches each. Now, if you don't have a miter saw or even a jigsaw, you could definitely do this with a miter box and just a hand saw and easily cut through this wood. I sanded all of the edges to get off the little splinters. You could round the corners here if you wanted to, totally up to you. And then I grabbed 3 colors of paint. I painted one of the boards red, one of the boards green, and one of the boards brown. The next thing I did was jump onto CRICUT Design Space and type out 3 phrases in there, have my CRICUT cut it out so that I could apply them to the side of my boards. Now, if you do not have a CRICUT, have no fear. Grab yourself some small letter stickers. You could stencil, or you could even just print something out on cardstock and then attach it to the board. So I did 3 different phrases or words, I guess you could say. One says gingerbread man, and I put that on the red board. Then on the brown board, I put gingerbread stories, but I meant to put sugar and spice recipes. So that means that the green board got sugar and spice recipes. Now it is ribbon time. So I stocked up on my Christmas themed ribbon, and funny enough, all of these ribbons came from just the regular old ribbon section at Hobby Lobby, with the exception of one, and that's the little gingerbread one that I picked up in the Christmas section at Hobby Lobby. So I started with that gingerbread ribbon, and I decided to put that on the red board. So I cut a piece of it and just secured it to the bottom of the board with some hot glue. The brown board got a green ribbon, again securing it with some hot glue, and the green board got some red ribbon, you guessed it, secured with hot glue. With the ribbon secured, I grabbed my 3 boards and I stacked them how I wanted them to look. Now, I didn't want them just right on top of each other, so I kind of did a cattywampus stack and then secured them to each other with some hot glue. Here comes the fun part. So I grabbed my faux sprinkles along with some of these little red and green beads. They don't have holes. They just reminded me of like the little round, sprinkles that when you get it on a cookie, it's like, please don't break my tooth. Yeah. So I picked those up from Amazon, and then I also grabbed some white hot glue, and then my little box of embellishments that is just a accumulation of, over the years, just a bunch of random Christmas stuff in there. So what I did is I started with some white hot glue, and I started on that green board. And just remember, when you are working with the white hot glue or any of the color glue, whether it's brown or white, especially this time of year, if you're squirting it out and it starts to harden, or you missed a spot, or you're getting bubbles, all you have to do is squirt it out, grab your heat gun and run it over the top of it. It will soften it out, it will smooth it out, and you don't have to try to work under pressure and be all, stressed out that you're not going to have enough time to place everything. So I squirted out the white hot glue, and then I added some little embellishments to that. I also put some glue on that little area of the brown one. And then for the top, I've got something special. For the top, I picked up this gingerbread house ornament from Walmart, and I hot glued it down to the top of the red board. Then I did squirt some more of the white hot glue, add some more of the little sprinkles and embellishments, and then this was finished. DIY is an Anthropologie dupe for this $128 bow garland. To make this, I picked up these pre-made bows from Hobby Lobby. They were half off, which means all of these bows cost me $18. Now, you definitely could do it cheaper, probably less than $10 if you're willing to pick up a yard of fabric and make your own bows. I really like the texture of these, and they're very sturdy and full, and so this is what I went with. I started by taking them off the backers. I wanted to keep the little ties on there just in case I decide to break this down at a later time. So I just kind of squished them up in the back so that if I do decide to take this garland apart, I can do that. To get these attached, it was very simple. I used a needle threader to help me get my embroidery floss into my needle. I used all of the strands. I tied one end of it, making sure to leave a little bit of a tail. Then taking 2 bows, I started in the left corner of one. I went down about 1/4 of an inch and then just poked it into the bow in about the same spot. Then I pulled it back through, just putting a stitch right next to that one. And then when I pulled it all the way through, I simply just double knotted the embroidery floss and then trimmed off the extra pieces. And that's how I tacked the bows together. I didn't use hot glue just because, like I said, in case I decide to take this apart, I want to be able to do that very easily. And I continued doing this until I attached all the bows together, just simply tacking it at those top corners of the bow. And then to get it hung up, I knew I needed to add some type of loop to the ends of this. So to do that, I just took some embroidery floss and I made a loop and then tied it off so that each end of this garland had something that I could hang it by, and then this was finished. Absolutely in love with this project, and it is beginner friendly. So I started with some of this printable sticky stabilizer. It dissolves away in water. I just got it on Amazon and I printed off using my regular old printer my heart design. This is what I'm going to stitch onto my hat. So when you run this through the printer, one side is shiny and one side kind of feels like fabric. You want to print on the fabric side. So I just cut the heart out of this little sheet of paper and then peeled the backing and stuck it straight to my hat. Now down below in the description box, I will have this free heart printable along with a little, I guess you could call it, information sheet that shows the two stitches that we're going to use along with some practice. So just check down there for that. You will also need a darning needle. Now this little pack came from Amazon. I bought it years ago. They are very inexpensive and it comes with different sizes. So you do want to grab one of the larger size needles in the pack. I'm going to start with the white yarn. You want to cut a piece of the yarn and then you want to tie one end of the yarn. On the other end that you need to thread through the needle, what I like to do, especially with these thicker yarns, is just kind of rub the tip between your fingers and then you can easily push it through the needle and get your needle threaded. The first stitch we are going to do is a back stitch, and we're going to use that to go all the way on the outline of our heart. So to start, you want to start at the bottom of the heart, at the, I guess, the tip of the heart, and you want to pull up from, we'll call that point A, then put it about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch and go down. That will be point B. Then you're going to poke up next to point B and then go back down into point B. So it's, you come up in A, you go down in B, you come up in C and go back down in B. And you just keep going all the way around doing that same pattern. So now I've done that. So now I'm going to come up at point E, go back down into point D, and you just go all the way around. Now, when you get to the curves, to make sure that you're still keeping that curved shape, you can do those stitches a little bit smaller. So try to make them as even as possible, but again, on the curves, make them a little bit smaller so that you can hold the shape. And here is what our heart looks like when it's completely backstitched. To finish off this yarn, I am going to tie a knot, and then I'm going to just feed that yarn through the back, kind of through those little stitches. So I will pull it through and just kind of secure it and then trim off the extra. Now we're ready to do our stripes to turn this into a little candy cane heart, and we'll be needing the red yarn. So again, you want to cut off a piece, knot the end of it, and thread that red yarn through the same needle. Now it's time to do a whip stitch here. And you want to start again at the tip. You're going to poke your red all the way through. Once you pull that all the way through, your first little white stitch to the right, you're going to come from the bottom and just poke your needle underneath that stitch. You're not poking through the beanie, you're just poking underneath that white stitch. Once you do that and pull it all the way, you go to the next stitch and go underneath. So you're going to be coming from underneath and then again pull it up, and then once you pull that tight, you'll go to the next stitch coming from underneath and pulling it straight up, and you will just continue this all the way around until you get back to the little tip of the heart. Then poke your red through there and do the same thing, knot it off, and then thread it back through those back stitches on the back side of the beanie. The last step here is just to get that water soluble stabilizer gone, and it comes off so easily. Just use your little fingers, gently rub it. It completely dissolves away. Let your hat dry, and then you are ready for the chilly weather. Dupe is a Pottery Barn dupe. These elf napkin rings for $29.50. I'm going to make them for a little less than $3. For this, you will need some green felt, yellow felt, black ribbon, and some fluffy yarn. I started by taking my pieces of green felt and I cut 4 pieces. They were 6 inches long by 2 inches wide. Once I got all of those cut, I grabbed my yellow felt and cut 4 small yellow squares. With the yellow squares cut, I grabbed some tiny sharp scissors, and what you need to do is cut 2 slits into each of the yellow squares, and you want to put them kind of close to the edges so that you'll be able to feed your black ribbon into the yellow square so that it makes a buckle. So I did that on all 4 pieces of the yellow felt. Now, before we start assembling these together, I started by gluing my green felt napkin rings and closing them off. So I put a strip of hot glue on one end and just brought the other piece around and tacked it that way. I did that for all 4 rounds. Once that was done, I had a couple of different types, I should say, of fluffy yarn, and I ended up going with this really fluffy one and decided to use that for the top and the bottom of the napkin rings. So all I did to get it attached was put a thin bead of hot glue towards the top and bottom of the napkin ring. And then as I applied the yarn, I kind of put it halfway on the napkin ring and halfway sticking up off of it, if that makes sense. And I just smushed it as I went. And when I got around to the back side of it, I just trimmed it and then tacked the end down with a little bit of hot glue so it wouldn't fray. So on each napkin ring, they got some yarn on the top and the bottom just being tacked on with hot glue. The belts were then tacked on. I just put a little hot glue on the yellow portion of the belt, wrapped it around very loosely and tacked it on the back, and then these napkin rings were ready. Requested more wood block DIYs, so here is a gingerbread version. I've got some 2x4s here that were just scrap wood in my garage. I cut one to about 4.5 inches long and one to about 3.5 inches long, gave it a little light sanding, and then painted both of them with some brown paint. I'm making a boy and girl gingerbread, so the shorter one is going to have a bow in the top left corner, and the taller one will have a bow at the bottom. Once I sketched out those, I grabbed my metallic paint markers and did the bow pink for the girl and did the bow tie green for the boy. Then I took my white paint marker and did the little squiggly icing all along the edge of each of the blocks. Taking my black marker, I drew in eyes. Then I also grabbed my pink marker to make the cheeks. Once that was done, I was kind of looking at the bows and felt like they needed a little bit of detail, so I grabbed my black paint marker and added some detail to both of the bows. Then it was time to draw on a smile with a black marker, and I finished off with some highlights with a white paint pen in the eyes and the cheeks, and the girl did also get some eyelashes. And then this project was ready to go. Let's whip up another dupe. This is a sweatshirt that ranges from $30 to $80 on Etsy, but I made mine for $11. I started with a sweatshirt that I picked up on Amazon, and of course I'm using some of that stabilizer, this water-soluble kind that I used for the peppermint beanie that I embroidered. And all I did was create a design in Canva, and then I printed it directly onto my water-soluble stabilizer. This has a sticky back, so all you have to do is peel the back off, stick it onto your piece of clothing, and then you're ready to stitch. So I got it attached, grabbed an embroidery hoop, grabbed all my embroidery floss, and I'm doing 2 different stitches for this sweatshirt. For the word Mary and the light cord, I'm using a dark green thread, and I will be doing a split back stitch. So I knotted the end of my thread, and to do this stitch, you're going to start at the end, you'll come up, you'll do 1 stitch length and go down. Then, just like you would for a back stitch, you go 1 stitch length away, you pull up, but to make this a split back stitch, what you will do, instead of going down in that hole that you just finished, you're going to go down in the middle of the previous stitch. So you're going to split those embroidery threads with your needle. So you'll go straight down in there. And then again, you'll pull up a stitch away, and then you'll go down and split the previous stitch right down the middle. And you continue to do that. Where it curves, to help it keep that curved shape, what you want to do is simply make smaller stitches. That makes your curves a little bit better and easier to manage. So I do this for, again, the light cord along with the word Mary. When you're done stitching, all you have to do is I just knot it on the back. Then I take that thread and I kind of pull it through those stitches on the back to get it secure and trim the extra thread. Now for the light bulbs, please bear with me. I was not in camera while I was stitching this one, but it's super easy. All you do for satin stitches is you come up, you go down, the next stitch, you just come up right next to it, go down, and you just fill the space. It's very, very simple. And that's what I did. I tried to do a light bulb shape. I clearly need to work on my satin stitches a little bit, but I just made the stitches longer towards the middle of the light bulb and then brought them in towards the top and the bottom of each light bulb. The last step is just to get the stabilizer off. All you have to do is run some cold water and then gently just rub at it, and it will disintegrate away. Then let your item dry and it is ready to be worn. Get ready, because this DIY is unique, it is one of a kind, and it is so fun to make. You're going to want to pick up a few supplies. We are making a Christmas theme letter jacket. Now, I bought all of my stuff for this project on Amazon, so I will link it down below for you. The letter jacket I really like because it is kind of like a sweatshirt fleece material, so it's perfect. And the patches were all just iron-on, so you don't need any special tools. You can use an iron or a heat press. So I'm starting on the right-hand side, or I guess the left-hand side of my jacket when you're wearing it. And I ordered some chenille patches, and I'm using my mini heat press on setting 2. If you end up buying this exact jacket, which they have in several different colors, red, pink, you could do gingerbread theme with pink. I mean, so many options. You want to make sure that you don't do super high heat, because this is 70% polyester, 30% cotton. So I'm using my mini heat press on the second setting. And I'm just ironing down my patches. Now the NP stands for North Pole, and I was going to put a U on there to do university, but I wasn't, when I wore it or when I put it on to see kind of where the patches were going to hit, I did not like how it looked. So I just stuck with the NP and then attached 2 of these patches. I got a big set of patches. I mean, super cheap. I think they were less than $10. Again, it'll all be linked down below. And then I also found this really big gingerbread patch to put on the other side, kind of like the mascot for the school. Now I am going to end up putting North Pole University on the front of the jacket, but I'm going to do that at the end. So once you attach to the front, you want to just flip your jacket inside out and go ahead and press the back as well. About 15 seconds, just continuing heat on those patches. Once the front was done and I liked how it looked, I flipped it over to the back. As with any letter jacket, usually there's a last name on the back. So I decided to go with the word Merry. Now, I was going to put Merry Christmas, but I ran out of space, so I'm just sticking to the Merry, and again, doing the same thing, pressing the front and then flipping it so that I can press the inside of the jacket as well. Now it's time to do the arms, where all the patches go, just like they do on a letter jacket. Now, for this particular jacket, you want to make sure that the shoulder seam is kind of in the middle, and then there's also a seam on the sleeve. Just make sure that on the front you're looking and you've got your shoulder seam kind of centered. Underneath the sleeve, you should have that seam running down the middle, and then the patches will be placed perfectly. And I'm just, again, going to iron on the patches, just like I ironed on the rest of them. The last thing is for North Pole University, my original plan was to hand embroider North Pole University with that candy cane embroidery like I did on the beanie. But when I started doing it, it really just did not look very well. So I got some iron-on vinyl and just printed out North Pole University. You can grab this file down below as well. And then I just ironed it on, and now my letter jacket is complete. I have gotten so many compliments on it. I've only been able to wear it once because it's really hot here, but I've already got several people wanting me to make them one and sell it. So I'm telling you, such a fun, customizable Christmas project.
I've been longing for this Christmas, when everyone's around to share this holiday. Yes, it's a time of happiness, a time of joy, but now this year is twice as special, 'cause I'm hoping for us to fall in love in this winter wonderland, chilling by the fire as I'm trying to get your attention.
Little makeover on some candlesticks that I picked up last year from Goodwill, and I just wanted to give them a fresh look. So I decided, you know what, the easiest way to do that is just to add some spray paint. Gold is all the trendy rage right now, so I was like, why not? I'll add some gold to these. So I spray painted these trees solid gold, but then I decided that I wanted to add a little something extra to them. So I grabbed some Mod Podge and, wait for it, glitter. Yep, that's right, glitter. And I sprinkled some little glitter on the branches just to kind of add a little shimmer to this. And that's it. That's all I did. Very simple makeover on something that I already had. I didn't have to pay any money because I had all the supplies. So again, if you're kind of itching to get new Christmas decor, look at what you have and see what you can refresh on a budget.
As I'm trying to get your attention, giving you a smile, I can seem to look away. I might be crazy, but I think you feel it too, like a vibration right between us with a beautiful tune. Could we fall in love in this winter wonderland?
Now, you guys might remember this from last year. So this is my delivery driver thank you cart. I do this every year as a random act of kindness for my delivery drivers. Last year, I upgraded to this cart that I picked up on Amazon, added some vinyl. I used to do a bucket, but I thought, you know what? Let me show you what I'm stacking my little cart with this year and maybe give you some ideas for snacks and treats for your delivery drivers and postal workers.
Cold night, but warm inside. Already said a little prayer that you will stick around. Is this year I'm really hoping for a kiss under the mistletoe? As hours pass by, all the stars shine much brighter. Or is it just your eyes that have lit something in me? See you coming closer from across the room. My heart is pounding really fast. I don't know what to do. Could we fall in love in this winter wonderland?
Here's another good refresher DIY. Find some lamps in your house. Now, I had these snowflake lamps that I picked up on clearance last year for $3 each from Target, but they were corded. So I needed to make them cordless, and what I did is I picked up these cordless light bulbs, or rechargeable light bulbs, sorry, that I could put inside of these lamps so that I could put them where I wanted them to go. Now, a quick little tip about this. Corded lamps versus cordless, it's actually often cheaper to buy a corded lamp and just cut the cord than it is to go ahead and buy a cordless lamp. Now, if you don't have this snowflake thing, you can pick up a plain lamp from Walmart for cheap, Amazon, and all you have to do is just add a wooden snowflake to it. You could add a wooden Santa. You could add so much to an actual lamp to make yourself a cute little Christmas lamp. This rechargeable light bulb's great. It came in 3 different colors and remotes, so it was perfect. And now I can finally use these after 3 years of having them just sit in my storage closet because I could never find an outlet to use them.
Fall in love in this winter wonderland.
Another block DIY. I've got 2 different blocks. They're cut to 2 different sizes. The shorter one is about 3¼ inches tall. The taller one is about 5 inches. The smaller one I am painting a lighter brown, and the taller block is going to get painted with a darker brown. Time to add details to the reindeer, so I grabbed my black paint marker and made eyes. On the smaller one, I added some eyelashes. Both of the reindeer got noses, which were going to be red. Then taking a white paint marker, I wanted to add some highlight, so I put white dots in the eyes along with a little curve and a dot on the nose. For the cheeks, I just used my pinky and some red acrylic paint and just lightly dabbed that on to the cheek area with that red paint. Taking some red checkered ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby and a red bell, I cut a piece of the ribbon down, fed a bell onto it, and then just hot glued that towards the bottom of each of the reindeer. For the girl reindeer, I also grabbed some raffia, tied it into a bow, and then hot glued it to the top left corner of the wooden block. For the antlers, I grabbed my awl tool. You guys know I love it. You can also grab a drill if you want to as well. I didn't really find that the drill was necessary, but I did start with the drill and then I just used the awl for the rest of the holes. I poked 2 holes at the top of each of these reindeer. Then using some Dollar Tree wintry branches, I cut them down to pieces that I felt like look like antlers. So for the girl reindeer, I just left them plain and I just cut them down and stuck them into the holes. For the boy reindeer, I again put 2 holes at the top, cut down the brown wintry, I don't know what it's called. It's not greenery because it's not green, but you know what I mean. And then I also added some mini little jingle bells. These actually came off a fairy light set from Dollar Tree that had these little bells on it. And all I did was just hang them on different spots of the branches. And then these 2 little reindeer were ready for the holiday season. Grab a Dollar Tree vase and this free printable that is linked down below in the description box. I sized it exactly how I needed it, and what I'm going to do is I'm only actually going to use 4 of these little houses, but I had to do it this way to make sure I can piece it together right. So I'm just cutting out the outline of it, and then I will piece it together so that I can use it as a template. You want to grab your favorite kind of clay. I am using Model Magic air dry clay, and I'm going to take this and roll it out to about 1/4 inch thickness. And the nice thing about this template, which I did print on cardstock, is once I get my clay rolled out, I can set my template down on the clay and it kind of sticks to it, which makes it really nice. And then I'm going to, as best I can, cut around the outline of this village. I can do the cleanup afterwards, but I want to get the general shape of this village. And here I have grabbed my daughter's sculpting tools. She has a huge set of tools. We got them on Amazon for so cheap. I will link the one she has down below. And I will say this is what it looks like after I trimmed around it, which isn't terrible, but it was so easy to clean up these edges and just kind of get it how I wanted looking with these tools, because there's so many different kinds. You could get very elaborate with these tools and do all kinds of fun designs and things like that, but I'm kind of keeping mine very, very simple. So once I clean up all the edges, I am going to cut doors on all of them, and I am going to cut windows out so that the light will come through my vase. And then I did go in and add some little details to roofs and just here and there, but nothing too crazy, like, because this was kind of the first of this type of project I've done. But there are so many possibilities of what you could do. Time to wrap the vase, so I picked up my clay. It took a little bit of finagling, but it really wasn't that hard. I was able to get this all pieced together, get it pressed where I need it to, and then I let it sit and dry for about 2.5 days, I would say. Because this is up against the vase, it's going to need a little bit longer to dry because air isn't really getting to the back of it. So I wanted to make sure I got it as dry as possible. At this point, you have a decision to make. Now, if you want to leave it white and that's more your vibe, you certainly can. But since this is a gingerbread village, I'm going to make this more gingerbready. So I grabbed some brown paint and I painted all of the little houses with that brown paint, making sure to give them a nice good coat. From there, I took my white hot glue and some of that Dollar Tree awesome glittery snow stuff that sticks to everything, and I added that to there to just give it that little extra something. Once that was done, I sprayed the inside with some adhesive spray, sprinkled more of that snow in there just to coat the inside of the glass, and then it was finished. Now, you cannot put a real candle in here. I'm putting fairy lights. The adhesive spray is flammable. The snow will catch on fire. So if you want to put a real candle in here, just either put it on the outside of the glass or just leave the glass plain. Here's another dupe for you that's going to save you a ton of money. It's selling for almost $55 on Etsy. I made mine for $4. So to start, what you want to do is I went into Goodreads and I pulled the covers of my books. I just saved them as a download and put them into a Canva document. From there, I figured out the size I needed them to be based on these little mini dollhouse books that I bought on Amazon. I will link them down below. And then I just copied and pasted the covers onto that little rectangle square so that I knew it would fit my books. Once that was done, I printed those off on a sheet of just plain shipping, full page shipping label to make it easier and not have to deal with Mod Podge and all the other extra stuff. So I can just stick these onto these tiny little books that I got. These are the labels that I purchased. And from there, it was just a matter of trimming down my books. So I did that on my paper cutter. Once those were trimmed down, then all I had to do was peel off the back and stick them directly on to my mini books. With my books ready, I grabbed one of these refillable ornaments that I bought in a pack from Amazon. These are the 3-inch ones, and they came in at less than $1 each for the ornaments. Stuck all of the books inside, made sure it was lined up, and then I did create a decal on my CRICUT that just says 2024 and stuck that on there. But you could also just easily print a tag as well if you don't have a CRICUT or don't want to put stickers on this. You could also add fairy lights to this, to the inside if you would like as well. Once that was on there, I decided for the tie to just take a piece of twine and I fed that through. And then to finish it off, I just added a little bit of greenery. I broke it down and hot glued it directly to my ornament and then finished it off with a little bow. Now, if you're continuing to read, obviously you're going to want to make sure that you can open this up easily and keep adding books to it if you're going to make it before the end of the year. But you definitely could make one that says 2025, and as you read a book, just keep up with it, and then when the time comes, you can easily print it and make one for next year. Starting with some of this scrap wood that I had in my garage. These are 2x8s that I cut down to about 9¼ inches each. I've got a total of 3. So for these, what I'm going to do is paint 2 of them with red paint and paint 1 of them with white paint, and I'm going for full coverage. While the wood pieces are drying, I'm going to grab the sleigh and give it a coat of brown wax and then take a baby wipe and wipe off the excess wax. I'm going to take some of this Dollar Tree ribbon on the white board. I'm going to wrap one end of it, taking it about 1/2 inch away from the edge, wrap it around and just secure it on the bottom with some hot glue. Then for the 2 red boards, I'm going to take some Santa ribbon that I had. This originally came from Hobby Lobby. They had it last year. That's when I got it, but I did see it in stores this year. And again, I'm going to wrap it around about 1/2 inch from the edge and secure it on the back with some hot glue. On the whiteboard, what I've done here is I've taken some painter's tape. This is kind of the front edge of it, and taped it off. And what I'm doing is using a black paint marker. I'm making Santa's belt just in the middle portion of this board. So I'm just taking that black paint marker and doing it on this side of the ribbon, and then as well as the little bit of section on the other side of the ribbon with that black paint marker. Once that dries, I'm going to grab a gold paint marker and make the buckle kind of in the center of this black stripe. I cut out 2 vinyl decals on my Cricut, one that says Santa Claus and one that says North Pole, and I'm going to stick these on the front edge of the red boards. And so I'm just going to get those stuck down, and then I'll be ready to start assembling this together. So I decided I need my boards to be a little bit cattywampus because I'm adding some things to it. So I'm just using hot glue. I started with the bottom board, and then I put some hot glue, stuck the white one on there, and then stuck the red one on top, and just made sure they were secured really, really good with some hot glue. Now I needed to get my sled attached. I think I called this a sleigh earlier. I don't know. I'm from Texas. All the snow stuff is the same to me. So I'm going to hot glue this directly down to the top wooden book. Then I took some twine and reattached that to the sled as well. Now it's time for the fun part. I grabbed some embellishments that I had and some white hot glue. So what I'm going to do is, starting on that bottom wooden book, I'm just going to take the hot glue where that little space is and just start squirting it everywhere. I'm not going to worry if it hardens or it's clumpy, because once I get the amount and get it looking how I want, I'm just going to take my heat gun to reactivate it and kind of remelt it. Once it's remelted, then I can add my fun little embellishments. So I'm adding cookies and little peppermints to it. And then I'm going to move on to the white book. Again, squirting some more of the white glue, adding these little fake sprinkle beads. I found these on Amazon in all kinds of sizes, and these are great for projects. So I will definitely link these down below. And then I did the top. Again, squirting all the hot glue everywhere and just adding all of my little embellishments. To finish this off, I took a bottle brush tree and hot glued that down to the sled. Then took some of these Dollar Tree presents. I'd planned on rewrapping them with some Christmas paper, but I didn't have any Christmas paper with little tiny prints. I just had big prints and it looked kind of weird when I wrapped one of them. So for now, I'm just going to put those there and I'll rewrap them once I get some bright paper. I had a little jar of the coal, and that came from Target last year. And then to finish off the tree, all I did was add some of these little sparkly ornaments. You could add some fairy lights to it if you wanted to, but I absolutely love this little book stack. Grab some Christmas themed beads and some wire. So what we're going to make here is a candy cane, but we're going to put a gingerbread man on it as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is start with a red bead. To get it secure, I am just squirting a ton of hot glue into that bead and then just letting it sit, and that's how I got it secure. Then I'm going to thread red, white, and I've got these smaller brown ones as well as 4 tiny ones, and my original thought was to do a head, a body with the bigger brown beads, and then the 4 little ones were going to be like the arms and the legs. But it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't quite pulling together in my mind. So I grabbed some larger brown beads that I had that were already stained brown, which was a bonus, and I decided to use those. Put those on there, and then I continued threading the beads till I got to the end of the wire. And to secure again that last bead, I just squirted a ton of hot glue on there and got it secure that way. It's time to work on the little gingerbread man, so I did hot glue just those 2 brown beads together because I am drawing a face and details, and I didn't want it to look like some kind of gingerbread man from Beetlejuice where his head's turned backwards and his body's facing the other way and it's a whole thing. So I glued those together. Then I grabbed my paint markers and I drew on eyes, a mouth, I did cheeks, I did squiggly. I did start with all white, but when you see it in the end, I did change something on it. But once I got all the details on the gingerbread done, I grabbed one of these little bow candy beads that came in a set, and I just used my miter shears to cut it in half and turn it into a bow tie to hot glue to my gingerbread. Now, in my Amazon store, which is linked down below, I actually found some beads that are already painted to look like gingerbread. So if you're not into this whole drawing it and making it yourself, you could definitely find the beads that are already done for you. But you could add a bow to this if you wanted to, or just leave it plain, but I think it turned out really cute. Let's make over this Dollar Tree gingerbread ceramic house. So I thought, you know what would be really cool is if I could get these windows punched out of this gingerbread house. So my first thought was, ooh, I wonder if I can chisel at this because it was ceramic. It was going, but number 1, the sound was really horrible. And number 2, it would take me forever to do that. So I was like, nope, that's not going to work. Then I grabbed some water and I thought, ooh, if I soften it, maybe I can chisel it better. Nope, not really a fan of that either. I grabbed my daughter's sculpting tools finally. It helped a little bit, and then I busted out the drill. I was like, you know what? We're just going to drill. And it worked great. So I drilled holes into the windows. I started with the sculpting tools, but then I realized using my rotary tool and one of the little sander things, it worked brilliantly. Like, it went so fast. So that's what I did. I drilled the window, a couple of holes, and then I took my rotary tool and I just sanded out the rest of it because I really wanted to be able to light this gingerbread house up. After the windows were all drilled out and I wiped it down, I just took some brown paint and I painted all 4 sides of the gingerbread house with that brown paint. And then the rest of it, where it was white, the roof, the sides, the window trim, all that, I did go in with some white paint because I just didn't want it to have that ceramic look. But if you are more of that vibe, kind of Pottery Barn vibe, you definitely could just leave it and not paint the white paint. To make it easy, all the little details on the sides of the house, I just used my white paint marker to go back in and just freshen up the window trims as well as all those little details on each side. For the hearts at the top of the roof, along with the little red blobs, I guess they're gumdrops, I used my red paint marker and filled those in. To finish this off, I took some hot glue and on the roof where the little, I guess, ridges or lines are, I just did a line of hot glue and then sprinkled some of that Dollar Tree snow on there. And then I also did the base of the gingerbread house by squirting glue at the bottom and sprinkling snow on there. And then I also did the 4 edges of the house with that same snow. And then that was it. I left it like that. And then all I needed to add were some fairy lights. Christmas decor is nothing new, but I really do hope you like my version of Snowman wooden spoons. These are for decorative purposes only. I just want to make sure that's very, very clear. So I started with 2 wooden spoons that I painted completely white with some of the Waverly white chalk paint. For my first snowman, I had this 2-pack of little snowman heads from Dollar Tree, and I thought, you know what, we're going to break this down and use components of this. So I wanted to use the hat and I wanted to use the nose. I had to kind of size down the hat because, well, it was way too big for my wooden spoon. So I had to trim it and then kind of trim the top as well to make sure that it would fit on this spoon. So once I trimmed it down, like I said, I trimmed the top of it and obviously the width of it. I did take the extra pom-pom off the other hat and attach it to this. And then those little snowman heads had stuffing in them, so I did put some stuffing inside of the hat as well. Once it was trimmed down and I thought it looked pretty good and a little more proportional to my spoon, I hot glued that onto the top of the spoon. To finish the face, I used my black paint marker to draw on some eyes, and I did use the little carrot nose and hot glue that on to the snowman as well. Use the black marker to do 5 little coal dots for the smile, and of course a white marker to add some sparkle to the eyes. Then taking some of this red and white crocheted ribbon stuff I had, I made a scarf for my snowman and hot glued that and tacked it down to the spoon. And I wanted to add some buttons, so I had some mini buttons in my stash and I just hot glued those down, and this is the first version of my snowman spoon. For this snowman spoon, I'm using this snowman kit that I got from Amazon that has all these different pieces in there. I grabbed one of the beanies out, and then same thing for the face. Used my black paint marker to draw the eyes and the mouth. I used one of the carrots from this snowman set for the nose, so it's a different type of carrot. Then for the scarf, I used that same red and white ribbon, but instead of adding buttons, I added some little arms, again from that little snowman kit. And here is my second version. These would be great little things to add to gifts to just make them a little extra special. got 2 pieces of wood here. I just had this scrap wood in my stash, so I decided to use that instead of buying another piece of wood essentially like it. But it's about 4.5 inches by 5.5 inches, just to give you an idea of that piece of wood. You'll also want to grab some of these wooden Christmas trees. Now, you don't have to grab these if you don't want to. I got these from Hobby Lobby, a 6-pack. It came to $3 for these 6 trees. You could definitely make some pipe cleaner trees if you saw my video on how I did that pipe cleaner tree. So there are Dollar Tree options you can grab. And I'm going to start by staining both pieces of my wood with some brown wax, and then I'm going to do those Christmas trees that have a visible trunk. I'm going to also use the brown wax on that. While my pieces of wood were drying, I grabbed 3 different shades of green and decided to paint 2 trees with each color. And I didn't do the same tree because there's 3 pairs of 2 trees, if that makes sense. So I did make sure to do different trees with each color, and I gave them all just 1 coat because I am going for more of a rustic distressed vibe for this project, because I'm about to do my favorite authentic looking chippy techniques next. So here is the technique. I have used it before on my channel. I just personally feel like this really gives a chippy look because you do kind of get that depth and dimension, because as you can see I'm doing here, you want to take a candle and you want to rub wax all over your wood pieces, making sure that any little clumps of wax that end up on there, that you kind of smush them down and get them off. You don't want any little blobs of wax, but you want to cover all of the stained portion with this wax. So I did that to both pieces of wood. The next thing I'm going to do is take the color Plaster by Waverly Chalk Paint, and I'm going to paint on a pretty thick coat. I want it to have nice full coverage over my wax piece here. Now you're going to let this dry almost completely, but you want to let it dry till it's a little bit tacky. Once it gets to that point, you want to take some type of scraper and you're just going to start scraping and chipping away at where you want it to look chippy. And I usually like to do the edges of the piece of wood, and then I kind of go back and forth. You can go different directions. I mean, really, you could do anything. You guys might remember that nice tray that I made for my dining room table. I use the same technique for that. I'll link that video down below if you're looking to make a nice big display tray for Christmas time or something. But this is really just a wonderful technique to get that chippy look. Now that those are all chipped up, the next thing is you want to grab this free printable. I will link it down below in the description box. I printed this out just on regular paper because I wanted to make sure that this kind of looked seamless with the board and with cardstock. I just didn't want that little bit of a, kind of raised up look. So I used regular paper. You can use cardstock. It's up to you. This paper kind of has rough edges, so I'm just trying to cut it to make it look like that. And then I'm going to attach this to my board just using a glue stick. I'm not going to use Mod Podge just because, like I said, I printed it on regular copy paper, and for me, I feel like it's just better to use a good amount of a glue stick. So that's what I do to get that attached. It's time to attach my Oh Christmas Tree block to the base. So I'm just using hot glue to get that centered and attached to the base. Then 2 of these little Christmas trees had balls on top. So I took my gold paint pen, just kind of a muted color, and I just colored in those balls so that they wouldn't just be plain wood. And then I'm attaching 3 trees on each side of my Oh Christmas Tree music. I'm just using some hot glue to get those secured down to the base. Now, I had thought about adding some greenery. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to leave it plain. At this point, it's kind of just your own creative decision what you want to do, but I thought it would look cute if I added a pop of color. So I took some red velvet ribbon that I got in a big spool from Amazon, and I just made a bow and then kind of did the tails and anchored them to the board to kind of make them look wavy. And then that's it. I absolutely love this piece. It's going to go next to my piano, and you definitely could do more things to it, like add fairy lights and take it a little further if you wanted to, but I absolutely love how this one turned out. We are making over this little sign. So the first step here was I took some brown wax and I painted the sides and the front portion of it, the part that says love, whatever the words are on there at the moment I can't think of. It doesn't need to be painted brown, but I wanted to get the other portions that would be showing painted with this brown wax, and I did go for full coverage. The next step is just to do that same chippy technique where you take the wax, you rub it on there, you take your paint, you let it dry almost completely, and then you chip away at it to get the look that you like. So now what's going to go on this top part, I love the movie White Christmas, so I found a graphic and created a printable. I added some things to it. You can grab this free printable along with the other ones you see in today's video down below in the description box along with all the supplies, so just check down there. So all I'm going to do is just measure so I can get this size correctly to get my printable attached. I'm just going to use a glue stick. I did print it out on white cardstock so that it would be a little sturdier, and I'm just going to attach it with a regular Elmer's glue stick. And then once that was attached, it was perfectly fine as is. Of course, I went through the motion of, do I add a bow? I had some blue feathers from a previous White Christmas DIY that I had done. So I messed around with some ideas, and in the end, I just decided to leave it plain, and I absolutely love how this turned out. So excited for this DIY. It is so cute. This project is inspired by this picture that I found from Kim's Crafts. Her snowmen are so cute, so I knew I wanted to make one. You want to start with 2 of these larger Dollar Tree ornaments. Now, if you want to do this the easy way, take yourself to the hardware store and buy yourself some of the frosted glass spray paint. I personally am trying really hard to use up my stash, and I didn't want to go out because it was pouring rain. So I'm trying to work with what I have to get these to have more of a frosted look. So what I ended up doing was taking some of that stained glass paint in white, and I put that over it, did a coat of that, and then took some sparkle Mod Podge because I did want it to have a little bit of shine, and added a coat of that to the top of the stained glass paint. While the ornaments are drying, I've got a 6-inch flat styrofoam round that I'm taking more of that sparkle Mod Podge, adding it to the top along all the way around the edge, and then using some of that Dollar Tree sparkled snow and covering it with that. You will need one of these Santa's boots ornaments from Dollar Tree, and you want to start by taking one of your ornaments and you're going to hot glue that down into the boot. Now what I did is I just did the top of the ornament and I just made that part go into the boot. I just put a bunch of hot glue on there and stuck that straight on. Now what I'm doing is adding a dowel rod. This was from one of the Snowman projects earlier on, and I just stuck it into this, used a little hot glue. In my mind, this is just kind of an extra stability piece. So I poked a hole in the boot because this is going to be setting down on this little styrofoam platform. So I'm just prepping that and getting it ready. Now I got to burn a hole. So I'm burning a hole using my heat knife. I will link this one down below. I changed the tip out and it's kind of at the top, but a little off center. Once I burn that hole, then the other one, I want to make sure that I burn a hole kind of where I want that one to sit, and that way those two holes are going to line up. So that's what I did because I'm going to be feeding fairy lights into this, so that's why you need these holes to line up with each other. Now we're ready to attach our other ornament, again making sure those holes are lined up, and I started with some hot glue. I would recommend maybe using a super glue to make this go faster. I just built layer upon layer upon layer of hot glue. That area will be covered up with a scarf. Up to you how you get these attached and make them stable, but the main thing again is just making sure that those two holes are lined up. Now we're going to attach this to our styrofoam base platform, and to do that I just put a ton of glue around my little dowel rod there, as well as at the bottom of the boot. I stuck it down and it held steady. I was very happy with it. Didn't wobble, it was good to go. The other boot, you're going to hot glue directly, just kind of at an angle like it's kicking over. So you're going to notice this is kind of leaning. So basically this little snowman is kind of leaning to the side. That's what it's going to look like from the front. For the scarf, I'm using some of this fluffy yarn. I'm just going to tie it around, tack it in a couple of places, and then at the end of the yarn, add some pom-poms to give it a little extra flair. For the beanie, I'm going to be using this Dollar Tree dish towel that I'm trimming down. I wrapped it around the top ornament to kind of see how wide and big I needed to make it. Once I did that, I just hot glued it to kind of hold the bottom part of it in place. Then what I did was I pulled the top fabric through, used a rubber band to kind of hold that fabric there, and I'm leaving all of that extra fabric in there because it'll make the hat kind of sit up and hold a shape on his head versus just being kind of, I don't know, weird looking. And so once that was done, I just added a pom-pom ball to the top of my beanie. For the face, I drew some teardrop shaped eyes with a black paint marker. I used an orange paint marker for the carrot nose and a black paint marker for the mouth. Wanted my snowman to have some stick arms, so taking some of those little stick arms from that snowman pack, I used my wood burning tool, poked a hole in there, and used some hot glue to secure an arm to each side of the snowman. I took some of those glitter snowflakes from Dollar Tree and I hot glued those down to the base. I also added some of that yarn that I used for the scarf around my beanie. Took my little fairy lights. I got a ton of these in a pack from Amazon for super cheap. It sits really nicely up there and hides under the hat, so it works great. And I fed those through into the snowman. The last finishing touch that I decided to do was to take a piece of twine and some glittery pom-poms. I hot glued the pom-poms down and made a little garland for my snowman to hold. And there you go. You've got yourself the most cutest, just so cute little snowman light. Watched my DIY gift video and grabbed your free Christmas gift tag pack, here is a gift tag that you definitely might want to make. Start with some of these Dollar Tree chalkboard tags and you need 2 white buttons. They need to be 2 different sizes. All you want to start with is taking those buttons and hot gluing them down to your tag. From there, I'm going to add some ribbon as a scarf, and I just want to give a shout out to this organizer I found on Amazon. Y'all, it's a game changer. If you work with ribbon, I'm telling you, this thing is the best thing ever. I will definitely link it down below if you need some help organizing ribbon. Once I got that on there, I decided just to handwrite with a gold paint pen the name of the person that I'm giving this tag to, and that's it. I mean, it's just something different. It's something cute. It's very quick and fast to do, but it just shows a little extra love when you give a gift. Small wooden spoon. You can get this in a huge pack, and some air dry clay to start this project. Now I'm going to take just the smallest amount of air dry clay and I'm going to make 3 little balls. I'm going to roll it into balls. Then I'm going to shape these into marshmallows. And the easiest way to do that is you just want to get your pincher fingers ready on both hands, little crab claws, and you take one and kind of pat the top and the bottom as the other pair is just patting it as it goes around the circle. You'll just have to kind of, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but you can see it on the screen. And you just keep doing that till you get it into a nice marshmallow shape. Once that's done, I'm going to take my brown hot glue and put that all over the base of the spoon. Then all you have to do is just take those cute little marshmallows, stack those in there, and then I did opt to add some faux sprinkles. I love finding these different sprinkles, and it's super easy just to place these down in that hot glue. The finishing touch here is just to add a really cute red and white bow, and then this little spoon will be a little accessory in my hot cocoa bar this year. printable on Wings of Whimsy blog. I'll link it down below. I added the words Visions of Sugar Plum to the corner of the printable. Now, I didn't have a frame. I thought I had one, so I had to create one. I started by taking some paint sticks and I trimmed them down with my miter shears. Once those were trimmed down and I knew exactly what size I needed them to be, I wanted to stabilize this some more, so I took a piece of foam board and I traced around my printable and then I cut it out with my hobby knife. Then taking a glue stick, I attached my printable to the foam board. To work on the frame, I grabbed the paint stir sticks and took some brown wax and painted those, set them aside. Then I dug through all of my little embellishments and found things that were purple that could maybe be pulled off as a sugar plum. And I found a couple of like round sugary looking ornament things that I cut in half with my miter shears. I grabbed some little purple gumdrops just to throw those in there. And I will end up adding also some peppermints to it because I felt like it needed some more. And I hot glued all of those down to my printable. Now, for the frame, I did take some Rub and Buff and I rubbed it all over the wood part. It didn't quite do what I was hoping it would do. So I ended up taking some gold leaf and I just started patting it all over to try to make the frame look like it was antiqued and kind of like, you know, the frame was rubbing off and, you know, just making it look old if I could. And so that's what I did on those. Then the last step was just to attach my little pieces of frame and I just set them all out and then I used hot glue and glued them on one at a time. And like I said, I added some peppermints. I don't know if I pulled this off or not, but you know what? For a last minute craft, I think I did okay. You'll have to let me know. Grab a cheap umbrella from Dollar Tree or maybe one of your broken ones, save it because we're going to cut this puppy up. So the first thing I wanted to do was go ahead and use up these strips of the umbrella that I cut up. I grabbed some cardstock. I just tried to find a dark color. I kind of wish I'd had black, but in the end, it really doesn't matter because it's going to get covered up. And I wadded them up the best I could to kind of make it look like a ballish type shape. Then I did kind of tack it together with some hot glue so that it would stay with that shape. And then what I decided to do with the black strips is to wrap them around my little cardstock balls, and I'm going to make coal. So I proceeded to do that, just tacking the umbrella pieces to the cardstock until I got these lumps of coal. I grabbed one of these bags that I had in my stash. They come in a 2-pack from Dollar Tree, and I stuck my pieces of coal in there. Now, one thing you could do with this, if you didn't want to use it as decor, is you could throw in some Hershey Kisses in there and then put a gift card in there, a candle, a small gift. It's a fun way to give a gift without just, you know, wrapping it and that's it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's something fun to do. And then I also created this free printable that you are welcome to use that I attached to my bag. So what I did is I did put a little piece of baker's twine on the tag, tie it up there with the tie that was already in the bag, and then I took a piece of that berry garland, just kind of stuck it at the top, and then this was ready to be used for decor, to be given as a gift, or even just give it to somebody who's naughty that might deserve it. We'll be using this recycled oatmeal box for this project. I cut the box up and glued 2 pieces together. Once they were hot glued, what I did is I sketched out a blob shape And then I cut it out with some scissors. With the snowballs, what I needed to do was get these stretched out. So I started first by kind of pulling them apart, and then I realized I could feel the little string inside there. So I tried to snip it once I found it, and I just kind of kept stretching this out. Now I did take a white paint marker and go along the edge. Probably don't really need to do that. I just have a thing about details, and I wasn't sure if the cardboard would show through. But once I got that outlined, then all I did was take hot glue, put it on my cardboard blob, and I stuck these kind of flattened out snowballs down on the cardboard. Continuing to work on my little melted snowman, I grabbed another one of the large snowballs, put some hot glue on it, and glued that down to my little blob. And then I had this little snowman hat. It came in a pack from Hobby Lobby that I had in my stash, and I glued the snowman hat onto that snowman head, and then that red and white ribbon, I had that in my stash, and I cut a piece of that because it looked just like a scarf. So I tied it around the head of my snowman and then tacked it down to the snow blob with a little bit of hot glue. Another little option if you need a snowman hat is they have these at Dollar Tree. Plus there's a nose on there that you could cut off, or you could just literally take that little snowman and attach that guy to a blob as well. So in this little bag is a kit of snowman stuff. I got it a couple years ago. It comes with everything, the hats, the arms, noses, eyes, buttons, all the stuff. So I pulled out 2 of the arms as well as a carrot nose, and I hot glued those down. I just stuck the carrot nose in there and then hot glued the 2 little arms. For the eyes, I used these little bead eyes. I really don't know what these things are called. I got them in a pack from Amazon. They have like spikes on one end of it. Put a little hot glue, and I just stuck those in there for the 2 coal eyes. I created a printable with several different sizes of the phrase, "I'm having a meltdown." I printed it out on some cardstock, and then using the wooden tag that I had in my stash, I'm going to attach this to the tag just using a glue stick. Now I wanted to add a little bit more to the little sign, so I just cut some little pieces of greenery and glued those down at the top portion of this little tag, as well as making a little bow. The last step is just to anchor my sign into my snowman blob, and I'm using a flat craft stick that I had, just hot gluing the bottom of this little tag to that craft stick, and then just kind of wedging that down into the snow, securing it with some hot glue. Now I had an afterthought, and I wish I'd thought to do this. I wish I had put fairy lights down on the cardboard before I put the snow fluff, because I think that would have been really, really cute on this. But there you go, you're having a meltdown snowman. Tumbling tower blocks and some wooden beads is what you will need for this next project. So one of the tumbling tower blocks I'm going to paint with some brown paint, going for full coverage. The second one, I'm going to trim a little piece off the top, about 1/4 of an inch maybe. Save that little piece because you will need it. And then I'm going to paint that one full coverage with some darker green paint. Now it's time to grab those wooden beads, and we are going to hot glue those to one end of our tumbling tower blocks using some hot glue to get those secure. Once the beads are on, you want to grab either some burlap fabric or ribbon. I'm just going to use some ribbon because that's what I've got on hand, and we are going to make some head coverings here, and I'm going to start by tacking it to the top of the wooden bead, then pull it down on the sides and tack it to the sides, and then trim any extra. The back, I do kind of want it to lay sort of flat, so I am just going to use hot glue to kind of manipulate the back to get it looking how I want it to, and I will do this for both of these tumbling tower blocks. Remember that piece of tumbling tower block that we trimmed off and I told you to save? Well, now you want to take a smaller wooden bead and glue that to that piece of tumbling tower block. This is going to be a little baby Jesus. I've got a piece of white fabric scrap here and I'm just going to fray it a little bit, then wrap it around and secure it with some hot glue around that wooden piece with the bead that I just glued on there. The next step is to take your Joseph and Mary and hot glue them together. Then taking the baby Jesus, I'm also going to hot glue that kind of at an angle across the front of both of these. Now you've got two options here. So originally I was going to use one of these filling ornaments. I use those in my book ornament, but I am going to be using a Dollar Tree snow globe. So when you unscrew the bottom portion of the snow globe, there is this little white cap. That's if you actually decide to put water in it, that seals it all up there. So for that cap, what I'm doing is taking some raffia and I'm shredding it up and I'm going to hot glue it down to that cap. If you have mini hay bales, that would work here as well, but I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take my Joseph and Mary and hot glue that directly to the center of this little base. Now I decided it needed a stable, so I took some popsicle sticks. I ended up using 3 and I trimmed them down and I just kind of pieced together a stable. I made a little roof on it by just trimming pieces of popsicle stick. I secured it in the back and I painted the entire thing with some brown wax. With the stable drying, I took a gold paint pen. I started with my fine tip and I just at the very top wrote "Oh Holy Night" in cursive. Then I went back in with my thicker gold paint pen and just traced over that. I did end up adding some little sparkly stars to it. And at that point, I was ready to assemble my stable in there. So I did hot glue that down into the base. And I also tacked Joseph and Mary with a little bit of hot glue to the stable to hold it in place. And then I screwed the bottom back on. To finish up this project, I grabbed some fairy lights that I got in a pack and originally I wrapped them all the way around the little battery pack, but then I realized that when I put this in the cap, I guess, of the snow globe, that the ones on the bottom aren't really going to show. So I unwrapped it and then I just kind of willy-nilly shoved them in there. And then I screwed the top portion of the snow globe back on there. Now, I thought I had some gold spray paint. I was going to spray the white cap with that just to finish this off, but I didn't. So what I ended up doing was just taking a piece of that burlap ribbon, and it was so stiff that I was able to just take a piece, wrap it around, and I can just set this snow globe inside of that, and it kind of raises it up a little bit. And I added a twine bow. Now you could wrap ribbon around there as well. I mean, so many different options as far as finishing it off, but I like the little extra light feature and I just think this turned out so cute. These plain wooden coasters into a cute Christmas coaster. So I started by taking some white chalk paint and I painted each of these 4 coasters with full coverage of that paint. Next step is to grab a fun Christmas napkin. I like the size of the beverage napkins because you can trim them down and they pretty much fit these coasters pretty well. So I got these from World Market in case you're wondering. And what you want to do is trim around your image and you want to peel all of the layers of the napkin until it's just one very thin layer of the napkin left. The next step is to take some Mod Podge and paint it on the top of your coasters and then let it dry completely. Once it's dry, I'm going to take my piece of napkin, set it on top, and then take a Teflon sheet, or you could use parchment paper, and my mini heat press on the lowest setting, and I'm going to press down on there It does not take long to activate that Mod Podge. I mean, it is just a couple of seconds. That's all you need. And I just really like using this technique because it really makes the napkin just completely blend in with the coaster that you can't even tell it's been decoupaged on top of the coaster. Then, of course, you will need to seal over the top of this. You could use Mod Podge, a very light coat if you want to. I prefer to use spray sealers. I just feel like it doesn't bubble up my napkin as much. I just do light sweeping strokes, and now you've got yourself a cute set of Christmas coasters. To grab 3 wooden dice and one of these wood slice ornaments from Dollar Tree. The wood slice ornament is going to stay its natural color, but the 3 dice are going to get painted with some white chalk paint. Taking one of the wooden dice and a black paint pen, you're going to draw on 2 black eyes. For the carrot nose, I wanted a 3D element, so what I did was I grabbed a popsicle stick and I actually used my tin snips to trim down a carrot shape. Once I got it exactly how I liked it, I used an orange paint marker to color the nose, and then I went in and did 5 black dots for the mouth. For the snowman hat, I grabbed one of these off a 4-pack that I got from Hobby Lobby, but remember that snowman kit I showed you? You could grab one of those beanies if you ordered that snowman kit, and I hot glued that to the top of the snowman head, and then I hot glued these 3 wooden blocks together to make my full snowman. For the scarf, I grabbed some of this fabric that I had in my stash that originally came from Hobby Lobby. I cut a piece of that and then I frayed the edges to use that again as the scarf. I wrapped it around the snowman neck and I used a little bit of hot glue to tack it into place. For the buttons, I wanted brown buttons, but I did not have the size I needed, so I grabbed 3 different white buttons and I used a brown paint pen to get those changed in color. Once they were dry, I hot glued those to the snowman, putting 2 of the brown buttons on that center wooden block and then 1 on the bottom block. I wanted the snowman to have a little bit of glistening snow, so I took a little bit of that Dollar Tree snow and some hot glue and put a little bit on the top of one of the buttons. I also did a couple of patches of the snow on the snowman's hat. And I also took that wooden round and along the outside of the wooden round, I added some of the Dollar Tree snow there as well. Then I just hot glued my snowman down to the base, and the last thing I decided to do was add some arms. So I used my awl and poked 2 holes on that middle block, and using some of the Dollar Tree winter branch floral, I just trimmed 2 of those down to make the little arms and hot glued those in there, and then that's it. This little snowman would be perfect. You could use it as place settings by adding names to the top, maybe with a little wire, or you could turn this into an ornament. So many options, and you could definitely make different versions of snowmen. Makeover for a candle. So this is one of those Dollar Tree candles, and all I'm going to do for this is you just need paint markers. That's it. That's all I needed. So I started by taking a green paint marker and sketching out some trees. I did 3 going down and then 2 and then 3 and 2, and I kept going around until I got it all covered. Then taking a gold paint pen, I just did a little dot above each tree to kind of represent the star. And I also decided at the very top of the candle to take my gold paint marker and just kind of brush some gold up there. And that's it. That's all I did to this candle. Another option is if you don't have paint markers, you could do some rub-on transfers just to dress up a candle. It's an easy way to get themed candles for not very much money. I absolutely love this box. I wanted to leave it natural, but I was like, okay, I've got to do something to it. So I decided to kind of take the minimal approach to it. And for the wooden bead kind of trim around it, I took some red metallic paint and I painted those with the paint. Then I decided, all right, instead of adding vinyl to it or painting the box, because I really did like the natural look, I'm going to wood burn. So I wanted to make this a Christmas Eve box. So I created a design in Cricut Design Space. You can grab it down below if you'd like. And I used stencil vinyl to cut it out on my Cricut machine. Then I took the vinyl, applied it to the lid, and then I grabbed my torch paste. You guys have seen me do this a bazillion million times. You just spread a very thin layer of torch paste, let it dry for at least 3 minutes. I pulled off my stencil design, and then using my high heat gun, I started to hit that torch paste until it wood burned into the box. And I wanted, again, to try to keep this as natural as possible, so that's all I did. But you certainly could do some wood burning around the sides of this. It'd be cute if you did like a stamp from the North Pole. You could do something like that. And then for the inside, I wanted to add a little something in there. So I did take a piece of scrapbook paper, trim it down, put a little bit of a Elmer's glue stick on the back of it just to tack it in there. And then that's it. This is my Christmas Eve box. You can fill it with so many options. Let me show you what I put in mine. Project, I am using something that I picked up on clearance from Hobby Lobby. I saw it and knew exactly what I wanted to use it for, but what you'll want to do is pick up a piece of foam board from Dollar Tree. And honestly, there's an advantage to doing that because you'll be able to size this just perfectly. And I'll show you what I mean about that in just a minute. So the first thing I did was take this and I gave it a good coat of white paint all over. You could spray paint it if you prefer, but I just used Waverly White chalk paint. The next thing I wanted to do was add a little sparkle to this. So I am just using some of this sparkle Mod Podge for the less messy option, but you definitely could add glitter. You could add the Dollar Tree snow, totally up to you. But I definitely wanted to kind of keep the glitter flying around at a minimum. So that's what I chose. And I did one good coat of this all over my side. So now what I'm going to do is paint some half wooden beads. And this is one of my favorite hacks on painting beads to kind of keep them in place. I counted the scallops on this and there were a total of 12. So just maybe take a quick screenshot of the shape of this if you want to create this exactly, but your arch can look however you want. But like I said, there are 12 scallops, so I needed 12 half wooden beads, and I decided to paint 6 of them with red metallic acrylic paint, and then the other 6 are going to get painted with some green metallic paint. Another option that you can do is obviously find some embellishments. Hobby Lobby has great ones. Michael's, you might be able to find some from Dollar Tree. So you could do peppermints, you could do candy canes. So you could definitely embellish this however you want to. But I just took my half wooden beads and I attached them to each of the scallops just using some hot glue. So because my kitchen is a total gingerbread themed kitchen, this is where this piece is going to be going, and I'm using just some of these Velcro 3M picture hangers to get this put up. Now, earlier I mentioned that using Dollar Tree foam board, there was an advantage because you could size it right. Well, originally when I bought this, I was like, oh, this will fit right on top of my pantry door and it'll look like I'm framing out the door. Yeah, it didn't fit because my crown molding came down a little too low and it didn't work. So It barely fit on my pantry door, and I couldn't raise it up where I wanted it to go on the door just because of the door stopper. So next year I might have to do a little tweaking of this sign, but I do love how it turned out, and I just attached one of my little gingerbread wreaths to it, and I just think this is such a cute thing that you could add to any of the doors, above the doors, on the doors, just to add a little more Christmas spirit to your home. Dollar Tree metal tags for this project. So taking one of the tags, I'm taking off that twine. I'm going to cover the tag on both sides with some scrapbook paper. I have this pack of scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby. On one side, I'm going to do a polka dot pattern. On the other side, I'm going to do some Santa heads, and I'm going to get those attached just with a regular glue stick. I also have this pack of keys that I bought on Amazon, and what I ended up doing with the key was I did rub some Rub and Buff on there just to kind of give it a little bit more of a, I don't know, goldish look. And now I've got another printable for you. So this is Santa's Magic Key. I'm sure many of you have seen these DIYs, but I thought it would be fun to make one. So I created a printable. I'm going to trim around my little text portion of my printable and attach that to my tag with a glue stick. Then just using my awl, I'm going to poke the hole at the top and feed some chiffon ribbon in that I got from Amazon as well. And of course, add my key to it. And that's it. This is a very simple, easy DIY. You can definitely leave this set out on a tray or maybe hang it on your door. So many options. It's also a great little filler that you could put in with maybe a gift that you're giving to a hostess or something like that. This project would make a great stocking stuffer or a doohickey gift, which is what I call it. It's those gifts that you want to give to somebody, but you don't want to break the bank. Maybe a neighbor, maybe a coworker. This is the perfect thing, and I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make this. So I have this template down below in the description box. You can download it along with everything you see in today's video. I got this faux leather pack from Amazon, and I love it because it has all the different seasons. So I'm pulling out the Christmas ones that I like. And first we're going to start by making this with no special machines. So you want to take your template, cut it out. You're going to trace it on to the back of the leather, then cut that out just with a normal pair of scissors. For the little hole, I'm just going to use my hobby knife to go ahead and cut that little hole out of the template. Then place that template onto my cut piece of leather, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out that hole. Next, you want to grab your keychain piece. I got this little pack again on Amazon, and then you're going to be ready to glue this thing shut. Now, I would recommend getting either a leather and suede glue. I like this one from Amazon, but you want to use a strong adhesive glue. I would not recommend hot glue for this project at all. So go ahead and take that glue. You want to make sure that you get the hardware onto the piece of leather, fold it in half, match it up, and you want to put glue right underneath your hardware and then all along the edges of this chapstick holder. Now I'm going to let this set up overnight. I'm going to grab some of these wonder clips that I use for sewing, and I'm just going to clip all the way around this to make sure that this is going to get nice and secure for my chapstick. Now the CRICUT version, you want to grab your strong grip mat, place your faux leather down on the mat, and then you need to secure that down with some painter's tape on all 4 sides. I like to kind of run before I secure the tape down, as you see, I kind of press it right against that piece of leather and then press the rest of the tape. That just makes sure that it's nice and secure. Once that's done, you want to make sure that you change your blade in your Cricut machine to the deep cut blade and move your little white rings out of the way. Then it's ready to cut, super easy, and it comes out so nice and clean cut. I slipped my hardware on, and now I'm going to stitch this close with my sewing machine. So here I'm showing you exactly where I'm going to stitch, making sure to, when I start to stitch, do a little back stitch, and then when I've gone all the way around, do another little back stitch. Another thing you could do for this faux leather is if you shop at Aldi, you can make a little quarter holder. I did do a video a while back. I will link it down below where you can grab the template to make the Aldi quarter holder. But again, same idea. You can make some super fun seasonal quarter holders as well. The finishing touch is just going to be to add a little Christmas charm to each one of these, and that's it. This literally took less than 10 minutes to pull this DIY together, and like I said, great stocking stuffer or doohickey gift for a friend or a neighbor. Grab 2 different shades of green pipe cleaners and a Sharpie marker. And then what you're going to do is just start making some curlicues. You just want to wrap them all the way around the Sharpie marker and just continue to do that until you get a nice big pile of them. Then I grabbed some wire cutters and I'm just going to cut these in half. So you want small curlicues. Once you've got all your curlicues ready to go, you need to grab yourself a styrofoam cone. Now, the reason I cut my curlicues is because I'm using a small cone. If you have a larger cone, then don't cut your curlicues. And what we're going to do is we're just going to start at the bottom of our little styrofoam cone, and we're just going to start hot gluing these curlicues around. And it's not going to be any certain pattern, but I'm going to do a couple of the dark green and then throw in a light green. And then a couple of the dark green and then throw in a light green. And I'm going to keep working my way all the way around this cone. Now, while you're working on it, it's just going to look like a big ball of tangled up pipe cleaners because I was looking at it thinking, oh, I've made another mange tree. But no, it will come together. Once you've got all the curlicues on there, then we're ready to start making this look more like a Christmas tree. Now, I did grab a wooden dowel. I cut it with my miter shears and then rubbed a little brown wax on there. I attached it to the base of my tree and attached it also to a small wooden round. And then the final touch here, I decided to add some tiny little fairy lights to this, but you could do so many different things. You could leave it plain. You could add baby ornaments, lights, up to you. But I just really love this little tree. You will have to kind of work with it a little bit once you get it on the stand and kind of pull some of those curlicues. But I'm telling you, super cute, whimsical tree. It kind of gives off Grinch vibes. That is going to wrap up the first Christmas video of 2025. These were all from my DIY vault, so please let me know down below, A, which one of these was your favorite, or B, have you made any of these already, or which ones are you planning to make? I would love to know. Also, what themes are you hoping that I will bring to my channel during the Christmas season? Let me know what you're looking for because I would love to bring it to you. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Here are some more videos you might want to check out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!